Renunciation of possessions, however, will not automatically free you of the ego. It will attempt to ensure its survival by finding something else to identify with. For example, a mental image of yourself as someone who has transcended all interest in material possessions and is therefore superior, is more spiritual than others. What's up, y'all? It's your girl Kayla St. Cloud, and I am back again with another video. If you're new to my channel, thanks for tuning in. And if you are not new, my dog, what's up? I know it's been a minute, but your girl is back, okay? So this video, I'm going to share with y'all some ways to tell if you are ruled by your ego or not. So I saw a tweet online, and it was like, if you get offended when someone corrects you, then you need to check your ego. And that's true. I got a whole lot of thoughts about that, but today, I'm just going to share with y'all some examples for y'all to kind of see if you relate to it or not. And it just shows if you are being ruled by your ego or not. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so before I even move forward with this video, I feel like I need to explain what ego is, what ego means to me, and make sure that y'all are aware of what I mean when I say ego before I even go forward with this video. So in this video, when I talk about ego, I'm not speaking about ego with the negative connotations attached to it, such as arrogance or vanity or pride. I'm talking about ego as a derivative of consciousness. It is that awareness that says I am, and that can also identify other things. So I look at ego as a tool for identification. It works as an identifier, and it makes sense of you in the world. Like your ego would say, I am a human, I am this person, and this that I'm looking at is a chair, or that I'm looking at is an animal, or this person that's talking to me is another person. Your ego helps you make sense of things, but that doesn't always mean that you need to let what your ego comes up with rule you. Like, you can think and move beyond your ego even while it's working, because you have your own judgment to know when to apply what your ego is telling you. That's it right there. So before I get into these examples, I'm going to explain to you what it looks like when your ego has taken too much control. I'm going to quote Eckhart Tolle and his words on ego. So this is going to lead us into our next point. Eckhart Tolle says, you can be in your ego's grip when you're too zoned into separation, and when your thoughts have you, when you don't know when the ego is at work. So your ego can help you identify yourself, identify other things. It's a tool of separation. It helps you separate yourself from all the other things that you encounter. But our ego has largely to do with our sense of self, and a lot of us build up our sense of self from what people tell us and the things that we achieve and things that we have. So for a lot of people, their material possessions build up their sense of self, and it feeds ego. And the more that your sense of self and your ego is built up of things that aren't really you, I think it makes you more susceptible to having your ego lead you in the wrong direction, or have you react in an inappropriate way whenever you feel triggered. And so I want to help make y'all aware of those things, that you can take your power back from your mind. Eckhart Tolle talks about being in the background from your thoughts and observing it. And I think that once you can learn to do that, you got your power back, because now you can watch your mind do all things that human minds do, but that doesn't mean that you have to like give in to everything that it does. So we about to get into it. So let's get into our first example of being ruled by your ego. So this first example is what inspired me to make this video, and it was being offended when someone corrects you. Let me explain to you why that's ego. See, I remember I was reading Eckhart Tolle earlier this year. I did a book review on it, and he imparted some wisdom to me that really, really made so much sense. And he was talking about, when you have information and then you tell someone else about the information, and you're like, hey, did you hear about this and this and that? And they're like, no. For a brief moment before you start letting that person know what you're about to say, you might feel a sense of superiority in that moment. A little bit of happiness, a little tingle in your chest, maybe, because you feel above that person in a sense of you know something that they don't know. That feeds your ego. And that's nothing that really should build up your sense of self, because what is that? You just know something, that somebody else doesn't know, but it does build people up. That's something about gossiping. That's why some people might like gossiping, or, that it's like know-it-all, that can build up your sense of self. But to me, that's like the wrong thing to build up your sense of it's such a silly thing to take pride in, to feel superior over. So that's an example. So I think that ties into being offended when someone corrects you, because if you are truly humble in learning, then being corrected is a part of learning. Therefore, you would look at it as a gain. You didn't lose anything from being corrected. You gained if you are truly in the purpose or in the intent of learning. Being corrected should absolutely not offend you. But if you're coming with the intent of seeming like this air of superiority, or feel like you need to prove yourself, then someone correcting you would knock you down a bit from your high horse. And that's the ego at play, because it should not offend you, especially if they are being respectful in their approach. Why does that offend you? Why are you upset? If you can't just humbly say, oh, wow, I was wrong, thank you, then your ego is, that your ego is at the forefront of your mind. And I think that it would be good to say, why do I feel offended? This is when you can do the work. This is a perfect example of doing the work. Okay, you got offended because someone corrected you. That doesn't make you a terrible person, but now let's do the work. Let's figure out why. Why do I feel offended? And sometimes, people don't want to be truthful. They'll be like, oh, well, she or he said it to me this way. Da, 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 da. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it's just truly, you thought you're about to have a moment. You thought you're about to have a moment, a right moment, where everyone was going to be looking at you like, wow, this nigga knows things. And you got knocked down. That's just a perfect example of your ego at play. It was disappointed because it did not get its moment. Another relevant example of your ego ruling you is the president of Brazil, Bolsonaro. See, France, not even just France, like the international community this week offered Brazil $20 million in aid to end the fire in the Amazon. The president of Brazil said that he's not going to accept that money. I shouldn't be laughing, but it's so petty. It's so petty that I can't not laugh. He said that he's not going to accept the aid until the president of France offers him an apology. That is nothing but ego. And it's so detrimental to like the world because this is serious. It's so serious, but he is willing to not in the fire. This is something that affects every living person on earth. He is willing to not in the fire as soon as it could be ended because of his ego, because he doesn't like some of the criticism that the president of France made about the way that he is handling these fires in his country. And so before he accepts that aid, he wants an apology. I don't even have to dig deep into that. You know that that's ego. You see that that's ego. And his sense of self was triggered. He didn't like what was said about him. And so everybody's going to be held hostage until he gets his apology. And that is a really extreme example of ego, being ruled by your ego, because it shouldn't be to this point, especially at his big ass age. His feelings are hurt. He doesn't like what was said about him, and his I, his me is too he's prioritizing his I and his me and him, how he feels, over the livelihood of like everyone on earth. And that's one of the most extreme freaking examples of being ruled by your ego that I've seen in a minute. Hey, so I have another example of being ruled by your ego, because there is two sides to this. So I was talking about being offended when someone corrects you, and my boyfriend pointed out to me, what about the person who's doing the correcting? Which is also really true. So the same way that that person who thought they were having their moment was triggered and therefore offended, it could have also, sometimes it can be the corrector's moment, their moment to feel superior, and creating that separation that I'm here and you're down here. But if a person is just simply correcting you, then it is what it is. And if a person takes something, feels better or feels pleasure from correcting you, that's definitely their ego at work, them inflating their sense of self. It's petty. It's not worth anything. It doesn't do anything for them. Little do they know. But, in that moment, it makes them feel better. But overall, it doesn't do anything. That's the ego. You see what I'm saying? Like the ego, I don't know. But if a person is just simply correcting you, then it is what it is. And if a person takes something, feels better or feels pleasure from correcting you, that's definitely their ego at work, them inflating their sense of self. It's petty. It's not worth anything. It doesn't do anything for them. Little do they know. But, in that moment, it makes them feel better. But overall, it doesn't do anything. That's the ego. You see what I'm saying? Like the ego, I don't know. This was like a slight read, because I see this in a whole lot of people. Let me share it with you. This is why renouncing all possessions has been an ancient spiritual practice in both East and West. Renunciation of possessions, however, will not automatically free you of the ego. It will attempt to ensure its survival by finding something else to identify with. For example, a mental image of yourself as someone who has transcended all interest in material possessions and is therefore superior, is more spiritual than others. Like, if you give away your things and it makes you feel like you're more spiritual or you're better than other people, you're still in the grips of your ego, sis. Like, duh, that's it right there. You did that to make yourself feel better, or you're using that act to build yourself up, and that's where you went wrong. That's where you went wrong. So, to be honest, why not do what feels right and true to you? No one's saying that you gotta fake the funk and give things away just to look a certain way. Like, if you want to be low vibrational, selfish, full of ego, just, a bunch of negative feelings, then do that, But getting into like, I eat plant-based and y'all eat meat. Baby, the fact that you are even that makes you feel better, or you feel like you need to get on people who do that, who eat meat, you're not any more spiritual, because you haven't even learned how to tackle your ego, how to tackle your mind, because it doesn't make you much better. And let me not even get into that. But yeah, so for all the people that do certain things or don't do certain things, or, they're on a spiritual journey, is they pick up new habits and practices and then are spiritual, but then around use those same improvements that they made in themselves to separate them from other people. Like, you got to understand duality, but then you also got to understand oneness, baby. Like, oneness is a thing. Oneness is a thing. So that is all that I wanted to share with y'all this week. Hopefully, I don't know what I was going to say, but that's all that I have for y'all this week. Tell me your thoughts, feelings, and whatnot. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for liking and commenting and subscribing and interacting with your girl on the internets. And I will see y'all again real soon. I'm out.